All right, there it is all painted up. I got a little sloppy with the paint, but that's okay. It looks good on the bottom. So now what we got to do is start getting our new toe board piece to fit. So I've got it marked out where I'm going to cut it right now. So there's a flange here, but if we look, we left this much of the floor, and this part right here would have the flange that goes down because we won't be able to weld this once we set it in here. So we left this part of the floor, so we'll butt weld to that. So I'm going to cut that flange off, but I'll leave some overlap so that the floor will sit on, that side of it. All these forms in here seem to match up pretty well with the original. So here's this dimple here, and then a bend here, and that lines up pretty good here. There's that dimple and there's that bend. So I'm going to cut it here all the way across, and then I'm going to cut some of this off because we don't need to go up the hump very much. So we'll cut some of this out to start with, and we may cut out more of that. Who knows? But at least we'll get this cut out for now, and then we'll start fitting it and seeing what all we have to either trim on the floor or on the old floor or the new floor. So I'm going to cut this out now, and then we'll come back and start fitting it. All right, here's our first dry run. I got a big gap here. I can't push this down any further. The whole thing needs to go over this way more. You can see here. That's because this is holding it up, so kind of knew that was going to happen. Another thing I'm going to do is, if you can see the original floor here, how it's come down and bending, I'm going to cut that original floor up to get away from that bend, because that sort of loop there is holding it from going down as well. And I'll probably cut some more of this off to get it out of the way. Now, the reason this won't go down anymore, I'll take you under the car real quick and show you, is because, hopefully I can get this in focus. So here's the floor piece coming down, and it's catching right here. It's actually supposed to be, it's actually supposed to be bent out over this area. So this whole thing needs to be bent, I believe. I'm going to go verify that on the other side. So right now it's going inside the rocker, and it's bottomed out here. Hopefully that makes sense. So I'm going to go look on the other side, and then I'll probably show you what it looks like over there, and we'll see what we need to do. Okay, so here we are over on the other side. Now this is that piece of toe board that comes down through here, and you can see it's on the outside of the rocker. So that other one is going on the inside and catching. So we need to go over there and bend that one out. So I'll probably pull the whole toe board back out, and then do some cutting and some bending, and then try again here in a minute. All right, so I got it pulled back out. Now this is the piece that I was saying needs to be bent that way. And you can see how flat it is. You can also see that it has some bend lines in here that were not bent for some reason. I don't know. I mean, I didn't change it, so I'm not sure what's going on. I did notice when I was putting it in, it seemed a little odd, but anyway, I don't know. So I'm going to put a bend in it, I think here. So this piece here goes through and catches the backside of this and gets spot welded together. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this up into here somewhere and probably come straight kind of back to that corner there. But I got to get this loop out of it. So I'm going to cut it up like that. So I'll cut that up, and then I may take some of this off of here, and then we'll come back. All right, I'm going to bend it on this line that was here, but straightened out at some point for some reason. Hopefully that's going to be correct, or close to correct. I'm not going to do it too much because I don't want to overdo it, and basically just want to see if we're in the right spot. So If we need to make this line sharper later, we will. Okay, here's the second test fit. So I was wrong where I bent that flange down there. Actually, this sits right on the flat part of the toe board. So I need to bend that flange up higher. It went down and it's hitting again, and it may have just straightened out when I was trying to shove it through there. The other thing we'll do while we're here and we have this in is mark this. And I can't do it with my camera, but in my hand, but I'm gonna go ahead and mark that up and get some of this off of here. Okay, I can see more clearly now that this needs to actually be bent up here. So I'm gonna cut a slot here to get that bent. This I think should all pretty much be straight. So I'll cut that, bend it here, and then I'll get rid of a bunch of the slop over here. Now that'll allow us to bend the tab at this bend point here. All right, we did good. Look, we got down flush here. It's hanging up here a little bit, but that's because of all this. So I can just take a clamp for now. I can clamp that together. So now it's tight across the bottom. So I'm going to mark to drill a hole here, 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 where all those tabs are. And then we'll put spot welds or plug welds in there. So I got this good. This is okay. Now, just so you understand, this is over the top of this. All of the lines match up pretty good. You can see this line here to that line, and then coming over, that's all looks pretty good. So what I'm going to do is, because we still have a lot more of this that we can cut off, because I think the original floor is like down in here somewhere. So now I'm going to trace on the original floor up and over, so that I can get the, kind of a rough guideline to cut some more of this off to make it easier. You could just lap weld this right in place the way it is, and you throw some carpet over it, nobody's ever going to know the difference, but you'll see the difference when they get under the car. So I don't like that. We're going to go ahead and just do it the right way, and we're going to butt weld all these together. Now, getting this in was a bitch, I will say. So remember, we made this tab down here on the underneath side. I'm going to show you what I had to do to get it in. It was difficult, and unfortunately I'm going to have to take this panel back out probably a couple more times, who knows. And I'll show you what I had to do to get it in. So here we go with the crazy camera movement again. But now you can see. Now you can see the tab is on the outside of the rock right here. And what I had to do, even though I bent it prior to putting it in here, I had to this came down on the inside a little bit. I had to use this, I got in there with a screwdriver and just levered it out, and I was able to put my arm up through here and work the floor down while I was levering this thing to get it outward. So it did work. It was a bitch, and when I take it back out, it'll probably kind of bend this thing straight again, so I'll probably have to do it again. But that's all right. We'll get her done. So I'm going to do what I told you, make the marks for the plug welds. Also, I'm going to drill some holes in the mount here for plug welds to go to here, here to here. And then I'll come back and I'll show you where I'm at. Marking spots, drill holes. I'll move that clamp and do another one there. I'm going to do an outline. I think my pen's dying, but maybe not. So I'm going to do an outline of this entire floor piece. I'm also going to mark a couple holes here. We got a couple of tiny little holes where the old plug welds were, but we'll do some better ones. We'll do one here and one here, and then we'll fill those other ones up as we go as well. Now I'm going to go underneath. Okay, put a couple plug welds here. And here. So after I pull the toe board back out, we'll drill a couple holes there for plug welds. Alright, I'm going to pull the floor back out now. I want to show you one thing before I pull this floor back out. Now you see right here, I was able to move the floor over enough to overlap it, and the way I did it, because I don't think I showed it, you see that little V cut right there? Right here? That allowed me to get the floor in up over this top of this thing. So I just did a little V cut to do that. So now I'm going to pull the floor out. Okay, I made a little mistake here. I'm going to show you. So you see I traced the outline of the floor, of the toe board, onto the original floor. Now here, I can't get behind the floor here, but I can get behind it here. So, because I can reach down from underneath and trace it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this back in, and then I'm going to trace this underneath up to this point, this point, and I'm also going to trace down here because we need a spot weld down this to the floor as well. So I'm going to put the floor back in, trace that out, and that'll actually give me an easier way. I can cut the floor closer to fit this. I hope this will make sense to you. I think it will once I do it, if it doesn't now. Now here, again, I can't get behind it. So I'm going to put it back in, trace that out, and then we'll come back and we'll show you what I'm doing. Alright, I put the toe board back in, and I was trying to trace underneath on this side like we just talked about. I don't know how much you can see here, but I can't really trace underneath because I got a bit of slop here. So I'm going to push this down like that. That'll close everything up underneath. And I'm just going to take a self-tapping screw and this bit, and I'm just going to drive it in up here somewhere, go through the toe board and into the floor, and that'll suck it down, and then I can go underneath and do an accurate trace line. So I'm going to do that, but I can't do it on camera because I can't get a good camera angle, so I'm going to do that now. Okay, so I pulled the toe board back up and out. I was able to trace all of this from underneath. It's the side here. So hopefully you can see. I traced up where it is. This line coming down here is this surface here, which we're going to spot weld to. So this is the outer edge. So the surface is going to be down in here. So what I'm going to do real quick is just, I'm not measuring this, I'm just going to use a sort of a reference. Follow this line. Okay, so now I can drill some holes pretty near the center of this thing. I did some marks when I was underneath, kind of showing where I thought the spot weld should probably go. So I'll punch those holes out now. Those will be spot welds or plug welds. I'm going to cut not on this line. I'm going to leave it larger, but I'm going to take some of this excess off of here just to make my life easier. And then this side here, I couldn't trace it from underneath because it's back here, but I drew where this was sitting on it, so I can just kind of eyeball and take off a bit of it, and I'm just going to freehand that and just take out some of this. But I still want to overlap, so I don't want to cut too much. So I'm just going to take off a little bit more. And let's see, so that's gonna, what we do want, however, because we're gonna cut and butt this, which means that we can pull the pieces out from behind. Sorry, I'm gonna try to get you in here and explain what is gonna happen here. But the only place that we are not gonna be able to pull the metal out behind it is across here. So this will be trimmed to fit right here. So all this will cut and butt. So we're going to overlap it and then cut through it and then weld it flush. But right here we won't be able to get the metal out from behind it. Here we can get all the metal out from behind it. Here it might be a little difficult. I have a hole that you can reach from under the hood through there that I can try to work that through. Or this hole here. And if I can't get it out, I have to take the fenders off anyway. And when I take a fender off, I can get it out through that hole, this big hole down here. So the only part that I'm going to cut to fit is right here, right across here. So I'm going to try to work that out freehand. I'm just going to do that off camera and see if I can't figure out where that is. We'll have to put it in place and then see if we're close or not. So I'll make those cuts now, drill those holes. I'm going to drill 2 holes here for plug welds. That will go, that will end up being plugged here. And I did plug the back, I did mark the back side here, but I can't see the marks because putting this thing in and out scratches it up pretty bad. So once I put this back in, I'll just drill it on the car. We'll drill those 2 holes out and so we can plug weld this to the bottom side of the rocker. All right, so I'm gonna do some cutting and some drilling. Sanding off the jagged edges. So you saw me try to sand this area right here a little bit more. This is the area in between here that we need to cut to fit. So I sanded that down, so we'll see how close it is when we put it together. Now we'll punch some holes. All right, I'm gonna fit this in one more time so we can see how it's looking and make some marks. It's always a tight fit down this corner here. And I'm gonna have to use a screwdriver and help it from the bottom a little bit. Just gotta pull that tab out just a little bit. There we go. Alright, so the floor sitting in, what I did was I took my Sharpie and I marked all the holes where the plug welds are going to go. All up to there and those two there. I marked those with the Sharpie so that I can pull this back out and clean the paint off the parts that are going to get plug welded too. I also took the Sharpie and did another outline, you know, because we had cut this, it was originally up there where the black line is, so now we're going to have a silver line. And you'll be able to see where the floor is currently sitting when we get started. And I did, remember this area right here, we have to cut to fit. I did cut a little bit too much here, but the brace is right underneath this. This is spot welded to the brace, the original floor, and this will be spot welded here to the brace. So I can just weld straight across there, but I do need to take off a little bit right here to get this to sit down flush before I can do that. So we got to cut this off just a little bit, and then we'll be ready to put it in. So I'm going to take it back out and sand off the paint off all those spot weld areas, and I'll probably hit them with some weld through primer. All right, floorboard's back out. Remember I said I needed to cut this back a little bit more. That's this area right here. You can see where it's marked. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut it on the car instead of on the toe board. I'm also going to take a little bit more of this out of here because I want this as much of a sliver as I can get it, because we have just a little hole back up in here to try to pull that sliver out after we do the cut and butt. And we want that metal to be as pliable as possible. Also, if I end up cutting the gap too wide here, I still have this behind the old floor and the new piece that we can weld to fill the gap in if we need to. So now I'm just going to use this, I think I'll just use a belt sander and just hit all those spots and then shoot them with weld through primer. think that'll do it. Alright, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go all along the outer edge of the floor and just barely sand it with this. I'm just taking the paint off because remember we're going to lap weld over the top, except for right here where we're going to butt it in. I'm going to sand paint off right here on the floor mount because remember I have myself too much of a gap there where I screwed up. And anyway, I'm going to sand around the outer edge, and I'm going to do the best I can to do the inside from underneath. I could do it all the way to here, and then on this side here I'll probably just get under here with some Scotch-Brite or something and clean it just to make sure there's no grease or anything so that when I am welding I'm not going to catch anything on fire. Alright, so I sanded around the perimeter. Bottom side as well. It was a little more difficult of course, but I degreased the bottom side too. Now for all the areas that we won't be able to paint again or fix again, we're going to just hit them with some weld through primer. So we don't care if we splatter some primer on here because it's never going to be seen again anyway. But the areas that'll still be exposed, we're not going to worry about primer. It's just the spots that we can't get to again. So I'm just going to protect this a little bit. So I'll spray stuff that I've already cleaned up, and so I'm just using this weld through primer. I ordered it on Amazon. I couldn't find it in my little town here, so again we're just gonna worry about the areas that we'll never be able to get to again. Oops, I don't want to do that there. Alright, so I'll finish that off. I'm going to do here, and then I'll do the back side of this. I'll do that side. So I'll get that done, and we'll come back and fit it for the last time. So I realized something. I was spraying some spray through primer on here, on these two plug welds that are going to go here. And I realized, just like we did with the floor, I'm going to go on the outer edge of this and sand all this E-coat off. Now I think you can weld through it. I've done it a couple times. It seems to work okay, but I'm just going to take it off. So I'm going to go all the way around the edges where it's going to get welded. And I'm just going to quickly do that on both sides. Alright, we're ready to put the floor in, or the toe board in for the last time. So, all this is going to be covered, so it doesn't matter what it looks like. It's all been painted and protected. Now that's just some overspray with weld through primer. Prime this area of the toe board, because that's going to go down and get covered up. All this stuff here on the outside we can get to after we weld it in. And this side, think about it flipped over, is all going to be under here. So I covered all these, and I just went ahead and primed the whole thing because there were some scratches and whatnot. So that's all covered up. So I'm going to go ahead and put this thing in now, and then we'll weld it in. Alright, here it is installed for the last time. I've got a clamp holding this down because it wants to lift a little bit off that tab. Everything else is fitting good. So this is now sitting on top of this. It's lapped. You can see up here I gotta kind of press it down. And then this worked out perfect up here. This is cut to fit right there. So that area is gonna all be good to go. So what I'm gonna do now, I think I'll do these I'll at least do some of these plug welds first. And to get the thing to kind of start pushing down, and then and then we'll weld this to this, just spots, because then we're going to go back through and cut them off. So I'll get the welder set up. I'll try to set the camera up so you can see some of it. I don't know how well that'll work, but I'll give it a try. All right, I'll do my best to not block your view. I don't know how well that'll work out. I'll start with some of these lower plug welds, and I'll push this up and get a couple tacks up there, I think. I'm just going to keep working my way around. I'm just going to tack about every 2 inches around the perimeter. But I have to take a break because it is so hot today and I'm roasting in this jacket. So I'm going to take a quick break, but when I come back I will have tacked all the way around the perimeter. Just wanted to show you something real quick before I continue tacking on. So there's a couple areas that sit kind of high, like right here in this valley. So I basically just took a hammer and a punch and kind of punched this down to get it to sit flat with the other floor. And I have a high spot here, so I'm going to work that with the hammer a little bit. I worked this area here a bit. Oh, and I still have to push this down because I remember I bent it out to get that floor back in, so I got to push that back down. But yeah, I'm just using a hammer and a punch if necessary, because you want it to sit good and flat. Now, when I get to welding, if there's any areas that sit up a little bit higher or anything, I'll push it down with a hammer and then tack it. Okay, carrying on. All right, I got the thing tacked in. Just because I'm here and I have this with me right now, I'm gonna grind off the plug welds real quick. 36 grit on this. This removes welds faster than anything. But you have to be careful. You'll ruin your work in no time. So stay on top of the weld and don't go too deep. All right, we got a good overlap all the way around. We got some welds every couple inches. One area that I might have a little bit of trouble with is right here. I'll do that at the end because this is where that area that I cut it too short. But I think what I'll start, this is flush right here up to this point. So now I'm going to start cutting through the welds. Oh, sorry, I'm going to show you what I'm using. I'm going to use the thinnest blade I possibly can. So I'm going to use this, and I'm going to start cutting right through the welds. And I'm not going to cut straight through. I'm going to cut through. I'm going to try to get to like a 45-degree angle. Start cutting through those welds, and then pushing this in to flush these, and then welding them together so that they come out flush. So I'm going to try to show you on camera. We'll see how that goes. So I'll set up now. Okay, I'm going to start from this corner, back behind the brake, and work this way until I get up here, and then work our way down. And once we get all this flushed in, then we'll start at the corner up here again, work that way and down till we get everything flushed in. So I want to cut off like 2 or 3 welds, and then press it together and spot weld it again, and then it'll be flush. It's difficult with those pedals in there, but let me show you. So I've cut from here through, I cut through that weld. So I don't know if you can see it, but when I push this now, I can make these go flush. So I'll use a hammer handle or something, or even a screwdriver. As I was saying before I accidentally shut the video off, I'll use a hammer handle or something like this. Get in here and push that down flush, and then spot weld it. And then I'll keep cutting. I think I showed you this on another part, so I think I'm just going to turn the camera off and get this done at this point. So you'll know what I'm doing. Alright, I started to weld these in. This is flush now. As you can see, I burned through pretty bad. Not there, here, and here a bit. So I'm going to just that. Try to get it closed up. I turned the welder down a bit. Hopefully that'll fix this problem, and then I'll keep going on. Okay, I'm going to try to fill that little hole there. Alright, it's starting to fill. I'm going to let it cool. I'm going to just tack over here. See if I've got the speed and the heat correct now. Nope. Alright, I gotta do more adjustments to the welder. Alright, I wanted to do a quick update. So when I started welding up here, I was burning through. It took me a bit, but I finally got the welder situated. I still have a couple little holes to fill. And so I was burning through and I kept messing with it, and I ended up welding that whole piece across the top there and then grinding it down just because I was getting a little anxious to see how this was going to go. So I still have a few little holes to go back and fill and then sand it again. So then since then I've cut this down to here, you can see. So I'll start tacking that on. Now that I got my welder set up properly, it should go better. And then I still have the tacks on the outside here. So I've only cut up to that point there. So I'll get that, start to weld that in flush, and we'll continue on. I have not touched that side yet, so you can see it's still overlapped there. But I got carried away and just kept going with this. So I need to clean it up more still, but we'll get it. All right, I basically got all that side done now, and I did burn a lot through, so it was not easy. I think the fact that you can't get on the back side of the original piece and sand it very well, I think that helps create more burn throughs, I think. But it's getting there. I have a couple little pinholes to fill, but I've basically gotten up to that point there where I have that big gap that I screwed up earlier. So I'm going to start now cutting button down through there. Hopefully this will go better because I was able to get behind all this original floor to sand it. So I'm going to do that now, and hopefully it will come out good. just going to show you where I'm at real quick. That one tack weld I just did right here. Sorry about the focus. I ended up having to cut down this side to this weld in order to get this to push in flush. So I'm probably going to cut through that weld that I did already because I'm not quite flush. I needed to cut down a little bit in order to get enough play to push that down. So I'll cut through that and then I'll be able to get it flush and then tack and go all the way to there. So you got the idea what I'm doing, so I won't film it all. Then we'll come back. Okay, here's just a quick update. I want to show you sort of what it looks like as I welded that across. So that's all. Both pieces are now flush with each other. I started grinding the weld down here. I had a pinhole here I filled just now, and I have another pinhole here that I filled. And you can see I'm starting to grind down the weld. It's so important. You got to stay on top of your weld when you're grinding, because the weld is much harder than either piece that you're grinding next to. The weld is much harder, so you've got to stay on top of that. And then what I'm using is I'm using this to get the bulk of it, and then where I've got areas that are a little bit hard to get into, I'm using this. I didn't have this when I did the other side over there, so you definitely don't need it, but it is cheap, you know, Harbor Freight deal. So anyway, I'm going to keep going, and I will fill pinholes as I go, and I'll keep grinding away, but it's getting there. So I'll bring you back with the end result. Alright, so here's where I'm at. I've got it mostly ground down. There's still some spots that I need to hit, but it's getting there. I'm going to take you underneath the car and show you what it looks like under there, because that's important to see as well, so you can see what's actually happening. So I'm going to turn the camera off and then crawl under there, and then I'll turn the camera back on. But I'm not quite done, and I did stick a light underneath, and I can see light through, so I have a few pinholes that I'll touch up. But we'll explain that when I go into the car. Alright, I'm going to show this the best I can. So this is the weld from the bottom side. Remember, this is only just welded from the top. This is just what it looks like. I hope I'm showing it to you. It's really hard for me to see under here. So I'm going to keep a light under here now so that I can see light from the top, and all the little holes, I'll go ahead and fill those. And then when I'm done, I'll sand this best I can, or grind it the best I can to get it, you know, flat, and then to get some paint on it. And then whenever the engine comes out of here, then I'll really clean up this side, you know, clean up the weld more to it if I need to, but I'll clean it up better at that time, because it's going to be way too difficult to do it all now. But anyway, that's what it looks like from the bottom side. Now I'll shine the light up and fill in some holes. I just thought I'd show that to you, what it looks like with the light shining through. You can see there's a couple holes here and here. Couldn't see those. I didn't notice them before. It looks like there's another one right here. So anyway, by doing that, it allows you to see where you've missed. So I'll tack weld all those holes shut. And I know there's also a few down in here because I saw them earlier, but you can't tell now because I don't have the light directly on that section. So that's what I'm going to do now. Alright, it's in. I'm going to primer this thing now. I'm just going to shoot a coat of this on it. I'm using this because it's what I used on the other side. So I ground down the welds on the back side as best I could. I didn't do a nice job. I didn't try to do a nice job because, again, once I pull the engine, then I'll make that nice on the other side. And I do feel a few lumps in here and stuff, but that's okay. I'm doing the best I can get it for now. So I'm going to shoot a coat of primer on it, and then we can start finally fitting in the floor. Actually, that's not true. First, I'm going to make seat mounts. I bought some Pro Car seats with some brackets from Speedway, I think. And the seat sat up so high it was unusable. So on this side, you can see the holes in the floor there, hopefully. I made brackets. And I mounted them in here. These are the factory holes. And then, so I made brackets, and there's a whole video on that if you're interested. I'm not going to film that for this one. So I'm going to make my seat brackets now after I primer this, and then start installing the floor finally. So that's what this video was supposed to be about. But I figured I'd just show you everything. So, all right, primer time. Oh, I scuffed the E-coat, what was left of the E-coat, with some red Scotch-Brite to give it a little bit of tooth for the primer. And then I wiped the whole thing down with acetone. So it's ready to paint. All right, going to go paint. All right, so there it is, primered up. You can see a few little lumps in that, like I had mentioned before. That's okay. I'm going to leave it alone. I misspoke a little bit about starting to put the seat frame in. I actually need to get the floor fitted in first, or close to fitted in. Not welded in, just fitted. I actually had to go watch my own video to figure out how I did it last time. So, let's start on the floor.